So welcome to OOOM TV here from New York City. We are sitting at Milton Glaser studio with an illustrious group of extraordinary and creative people. They are some of the world's leading graphic designers, and it's a great pleasure to welcome Paula Scher, Milton Glaser, Stefan Sagmeister, Chip Kipt, and Jan Wilker. So Milton, this is an historic building, isn't it? You started New York Magazine here.
If that's what you mean by historic, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was an old building that was lived in by a judge, and there's no evidence he ever bought it, but he lived on 2 floors upstairs. And then for a while it was a Tammany Hall courthouse where he basically judged other victims who had been caught doing something. It was then sold to a pair of architects who ran it as a architectural arrangement for the city on occasion. And then we bought it from them in 1965. Which is a very long time ago.
It's a long time ago, and then you started New York Magazine here.
It's in the manner of the Italian Baroque. It was so celebrated in the Times one day. And after that, Seymour Quast and I ran it happily for 20 years, and then I started to work on New York Magazine with Clay Felker, and at one point, I was just mentioning there were once 100 people in this building, which is inconceivable now as we sit here. But eventually, New York Magazine had to move. The studio separated, and the building went on to become a studio building for a studio that I started in the 70s. And it's always been full of designers on one floor or another, working their way around it. A lot of them came from the School of Visual Arts, which many of us here have taught at. So it has that kind of relationship to life in the city. And it has become very valuable.
Mm. Stefan, when you entered the building, you saw some of your students or people that you know.
Well, I think that there are actually a whole bunch of our students here, because I think out of us 4 of us teach at the School of Visual Arts. Are you teaching at SVA too?
I used to.
Used to. So basically all the 5 of us, we think it's a good school, obviously. That's why we teach there. And yeah, some of my favorite students, and I'm sure some of your favorite students, actually started a little design studio right at the entrance on the ground floor, and it looked super cozy. And it's like, it's one of those studios that I'm very proud of, because they didn't learn it from me, but they probably learned it from Milton. It's always great. I mean, it's always very pleasing to see good work coming out of people that you knew when they were still students. It's just a lovely thing, and I think every teacher feels that way.
Mm. When you talk about good work, I think one of the most important questions, and at the same time one of the most difficult questions, is what is good design? What is good design, Paula?
Yeah, Paula. What the hell is it?
What the hell is it?
I change my opinion about that all the time. I mean, I think that good design it depends upon what level. Are you talking about a level of professionalism that's at a certain even standard, or are you talking about work that's really very surprising? And that work that's very surprising sometimes defies the term good, because it may make you upset when you see it, or you might think it's absolutely outrageous, or you might not notice it or understand it. I mean, I find that more interesting than sort of basic good design, because good design, I think, is something that the design community has achieved by a level of a lot of sophistication and education, and I think the computer and the internet has helped us all see what can be achieved that's a certain level, and the work that's interesting actually defies that.
Chip, what's your opinion?
Well, first of all,
I want to go all Tonight Show and say it's such an honor to be here with my heroes. I really appreciate it. And Milton, you would never remember, but I first walked into this building in the fall of 1986 when I was 22 for an interview, and you were very kind to me. But you did not hire me. But it was just a huge thrill, And so I'm off message. I mean, what is good design? I can currently tell you what really bad design is, and that is a cable TV remote. Which I've been having to deal with for a while now for various reasons. It's just a horribly designed, confusing thing that's got 10 zillion buttons on it that don't apply to what you're actually trying to do. Trying to think of a current example of really good design that I use a lot.
Is Apple good design? Apple products?
Well, I was about to say Apple Pay, which I use all the time now. I don't know, it works for me. There's good formal design, there's good technical design, frankly, it's too broad a question.
Jan?
Okay, I had a few minutes now to think about it, and I used every single second of it. I would say, and you guys should tell me if it makes sense, I would say that good design is never lazy, and lazy in a way that it's either crafted meticulously or it's the thinking was not lazy, was daring. So to me it has something to do with laziness. Like laziness breeds bad design, that's what I would say. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would make the distinction for, but I guess, is that, you're shaking your head, maybe not, or two?
I mean, I think there's another way to...
I have a lower expectation of good.
And what is that?
Okay. I said my expectation of good is lower.
Okay.
Stefan?
I mean, I think there's a way, of course, to look at it from our point of view, and then there's a way from what it does to the viewer, or what it does to the people who use it. And I would say that good design is any design that either helps or delights somebody. Or let's say if we do anything that manages to do one or the other, like be really helpful to somebody or be really delightful to somebody in the very, very tiny occasions, very few occasions, maybe even if it's possible to do both, I think then I would say it was worthwhile to do. If it does neither, maybe it was a waste of time.
It seems to me you have to separate design into its intentions, which is about every other aspect of your life as well. At a certain point, one has to ask, what is my purpose here? We know that one's purpose is not only for oneself. We've learned that, and we begin to believe it after we experience the disasters that humankind can produce. So particularly at this moment in our history, where a man like Trump, who is entirely self-serving and has no concept of the other. You have to have a concept of the other for any civilization to survive. And so a question that designers rarely ask themselves, although it should be the starting point for everything we do, is what are the consequences of my work? Or am I causing harm? I think you have to acknowledge when you are. You may not be able to help yourself because you have to put bread on the table and make sure your kid goes to college. But the fact that you ignore the fact of your work is a terrible psychic blow and a blow to society as a whole. When I read about those authorities who were evaluating the nutritional tables a couple of years ago and were paid off to say that fat was worse for you than sugar. And the first thing I thought of was these men should be executed because they have murdered millions of people. And the fact that they were willing to do that and get paid off and had a sense of authority and importance in the culture, but it chose to ignore that for the rewards of fame and money, is one of the worst things that the human spirit is capable of doing. So for us, the first question we should ask is, what are the consequences of what I do? And if you say, well, the consequence of what I do is I suggest that it's okay to eat sugar and then millions of kids die of diabetes, I don't know how you deal with that except to first acknowledge it and then to stop.
When the city of New York asked you in 1977 to create a logo for the city, and at that time the city had a high crime rate, it was a disaster. So also for tourists who came to New York, this was a dangerous city in the eyes of people from outside as well. And the city asked you to create a logo just to inspire the people of New York and to show that, okay, I love this city. It's a great city and I'm proud of living here. So you had the idea, I think, in a taxi, in a cab for this.
However.
And is this what you mean, what we should talk and think about what we are doing with our creativity, with our work, because you gave the city of New York the rights, the copyrights of this logo for free. Yeah. So was this your intention, just to do your part in order to make this city successful and a great city again?
The most important thing any designer can do is change consciousness. I mean, when you talked about what is successful, I changed the consciousness of people witnessing something, and that goes for everything, whether it's a newspaper or a building. You shift perceptions when you do things successfully. But if you basically do something that causes people to damage their life, you're in a different category. And there is intrinsically this idea, it's where the link between design and art exists, that art and the idea of beauty is a way of people to share experience so they don't kill each other. In the deepest level, what we do when we are successful and we reconcile the idea of beauty and consideration of others, is that we prevent people from killing each other. I can say that only occasionally can you quantify this, but when you do, you realize you're involved in something more than money and fame, which in our culture is the most incredibly attractive aspect of being alive at this time.